The story begins in the Caribbean Sea, where we see a family aboard a luxury boat enjoying a vacation in the middle of the ocean. The family consists of Tom, his wife Julia, and their two children, Cassie and Ben. All four of them seem happy because, after months of non-stop work and busy schedules, they finally have the chance to spend quality time together. The sea is completely calm, and as far as the eye can see, there is nothing but endless water. However, they have no idea that within a few hours, they will be fighting for their lives. A little later, we see Julia jump into the water for a swim. Meanwhile, Tom and Ben stay on the boat, busy fishing. At first, everything seems perfectly normal, but suddenly, Julia feels something strange beneath the water, as if an enormous presence is moving somewhere nearby. Nervously, she looks around, but she cannot see anything. Then, without warning, a mysterious force grabs her from below and drags her deep underwater. At the very same moment, all the equipment on the boat begins acting strangely. The compass starts spinning wildly, and the boat gently rocks from side to side. However, Tom and Ben are too focused on fishing to notice anything unusual. Meanwhile, Julia struggles and manages to reach the surface. But the moment she comes up, she is shocked. In just a few seconds, she has somehow drifted far away from the boat. She starts screaming Tom's name at the top of her lungs, but the sound of the ocean drowns out her cries. Then, Julia notices something even more terrifying. The seawater is rapidly pulling backward, as if the ocean itself is retreating. The sight fills her with fear because she has never witnessed anything like it before. Desperately, she turns toward her daughter Cassie and Julia keeps calling out for help. But Cassie is wearing headphones and listening to music, so she doesn't hear a thing. As Julia drifts farther and farther away from the boat, Tom finally catches the faint sound of her voice. He quickly turns around, and the moment he sees how far she has drifted, panic takes over. Without wasting a single second, Tom dives straight into the water. Meanwhile, Ben rushes to start the boat's engine and steers it toward them. After a desperate struggle against the waves, Tom finally reaches Julia and prevents her from drowning. Ben and Cassie then work together to pull both of them safely back onto the boat. Once they are aboard, Tom angrily scolds Cassie, telling her that if they had been even a little later, the situation could have ended in tragedy. Cassie apologizes and explains that she was wearing headphones, which is why she never heard Julia calling for help. Tom then gives everyone a strict warning that from now on, nobody is allowed to enter the water without telling the others first. Everyone agrees, and as the evening slowly turns into night, the tension begins to fade. Later, the entire family celebrates Ben's birthday with great excitement. They enjoy a meal together, laugh, and spend quality time as a family. Everything seems completely normal again. But then, out of nowhere, Cassie receives a video call from her boyfriend. At first, she happily answers and starts chatting with him, smiling and laughing as they talk. But a few moments later, everything is about to change. On the other side, her boyfriend sounded terrified. Nervously, he said, "You all need to get to a safe place immediately. The news is reporting that something massive is about to happen across the entire world." Hearing this, Cassie became frightened and asked, "What happened? What's going on?" But before he could answer, the call suddenly disconnected and the network signal completely disappeared. Cassie immediately told her parents what had happened. Tom and Julia quickly went outside to check the area around the boat. However, the sight that greeted them made their faces turn pale. Surrounding the boat were dozens of whales and sharks swimming in circles. It looked as if every creature in the ocean had already sensed an approaching danger. Seeing this, Tom realized that something catastrophic was about to happen. But suddenly, the boat was struck from below with tremendous force. The entire vessel shook violently, and everyone panicked. Tom immediately understood that a massive sea creature had attacked the boat. Without wasting a second, he jumped into the water to inspect the damage. But what he discovered beneath the boat left him stunned. A huge hole had been torn into the hull, as if it had been ripped open by an enormous shark. Tom quickly returned to the surface, but during the inspection, he suffered a deep wound on his shoulder. As soon as he climbed back aboard, he told his family that the boat's engine had been completely destroyed and there was no way for them to leave. The news drained the color from everyone's faces. They were now stranded in the middle of the ocean. To make matters worse, the communication system had stopped working as well, leaving them with no way to call for help. No one survives. Just then, a deafening sound suddenly comes from outside. It feels as if something incredibly heavy is falling from the sky, straight toward them. Hearing the noise, everyone rushes outside in panic, and the sight before them leaves them completely stunned. A massive burning object is hurtling down from the sky at incredible speed, heading directly toward their boat. The fiery ball is coming straight at them and is only seconds away from impact. Seeing this, Tom immediately runs to the engine and desperately tries to start it. At first, the engine refuses to turn on, but in the very last moment, it finally roars to life. Tom quickly steers the boat slightly to the side, causing the burning object to miss them and crash into the water nearby instead. Although their lives are spared, the effort completely destroys the engine. The boat is now permanently disabled and left drifting helplessly at sea. Tom carefully looks at the object and suddenly realizes it was not an asteroid at all. It was a satellite. At that moment, he finally understands why communication systems around the world suddenly stopped working. But before he can explain anything to his family, another satellite begins falling from the sky directly toward them. Now, there is no way to escape. Without wasting a second, Tom urgently orders everyone to get inside the boat. The entire family rushes below deck as fear and uncertainty take hold, knowing that another deadly impact could happen at any moment. They quickly rush to the lower deck and put on their life jackets. But the moment they got downstairs, the entire boat began shaking violently. It felt as if a massive explosion had occurred outside. A few seconds later, a deafening blast echoed through the air, and in the very next moment, everyone lost consciousness. After what seemed like hours, they finally woke up. At first, no one could understand what had happened. They had all suffered minor injuries, but the strangest thing was that the boat now had several large holes in its structure. Despite this, no water was flooding inside. The sight left everyone confused and frightened. Tom and Julia decided to go outside and investigate. However, the moment the family stepped out of the boat, they froze in shock. Their boat was no longer floating on water. It was resting on dry land. As far as the eye could see, the ocean had completely vanished. Thousands of fish were flopping helplessly across the barren seabed, while the boat appeared stranded in the middle of a desolate, mountainous landscape. It looked as if the entire world had transformed overnight. Where there had been nothing but endless ocean the previous night, enormous mountains and deep craters now stretched across the horizon. At first, everyone assumed they had somehow drifted to a different location. But then Tom quickly pulled out his compass and checked their direction. The moment he looked at it, his face turned pale. He immediately realized something terrifying. The Earth's poles had reversed. The North Pole had switched places with the South Pole, and the South Pole had become the North Pole. Because of this catastrophic shift, the world's oceans had been pulled toward other parts of the planet. Areas that were once covered by water were now exposed as dry land. The revelation terrified everyone. But then, Tom shared an even more horrifying thought. If all the water on Earth had moved to the opposite side of the planet, then billions of people living in those regions might not have survived. Hearing this, Cassie completely broke down. Overwhelmed with fear and grief, she ran into the cabin, locked the door behind her, and burst into tears. Meanwhile, Tom made one final attempt to contact anyone using the boat's radio. He had almost no hope that anyone would respond. The voice belonged to a captain named NATO. He was inside his submarine and already knew about the disaster that had struck the world. Tom immediately asked him what had caused all of this and what they should do next. Captain NATO explained that the Earth's poles would eventually return to their original positions. However, when that happened, all the ocean water would rush back across the planet. The returning water would create massive waves so powerful that everything on land would be wiped out. The moment everyone heard this, fear spread across their faces. NATO warned them that the waves could reach hundreds of meters in height, and no one on the surface would survive when they arrived. If they wanted any chance of staying alive, they had to reach his submarine as quickly as possible. Julia immediately told the children to start packing their belongings. Tom desperately asked the captain to make room for his two kids aboard the submarine. In return, he offered all of the food supplies they had left. After thinking for a moment, Captain NATO agreed and explained his location over the radio. Tom quickly pulled out a map and began studying the coordinates. After spending a long time calculating the route, he realized that if they kept moving without stopping, they could reach the submarine in about 2 days. The next morning, the entire family prepared for the dangerous journey. Just as they were about to leave, Tom noticed a man in the distance walking toward them with his dog. At first, the stranger looked weak, exhausted, and badly injured. Seeing him, Tom assumed he was another helpless survivor who had somehow made it through the catastrophe. Feeling sympathy for the man, Tom decided to help him. Tom grabs a bottle of water and walks over to the man. The stranger quickly snatches the bottle and drinks the water desperately. But in the very next moment, he suddenly pulls out a knife he had been hiding and launches a direct attack on Tom. Everything happens so fast that Tom doesn't even have a chance to defend himself. The knife plunges straight into his body, and within seconds, he collapses to the ground. Standing at a distance, Julia witnesses the horrifying scene. The sight leaves her completely shocked. After killing Tom, the man immediately starts moving toward Julia. Julia realizes that if she wastes even a single second, her children could be next. She rushes back onto the boat and quickly locks both of her children inside the cabin. Then she hands Casey a flare gun and tells her to use it only if the situation becomes completely out of control. Meanwhile, the killer reaches the boat. To protect herself, Julia quickly hides inside the bathroom. The man begins searching every corner of the boat. Soon, he notices a supply of food and drinks and starts devouring them like a starving animal. After finishing the food, he slowly makes his way toward the cabin. Julia manages to escape through a damaged hole in the boat and climbs outside. But just then, the man's dog spots her and starts barking loudly. Acting fast, Julia turns toward the dog and prepares to defend herself before it can reveal her hiding place. She kills the dog and then hides beneath the boat. When the killer comes outside and sees his dog's lifeless body, he immediately realizes that Julia must still be nearby. He climbs down from the boat to search for her. The moment he goes below, Julia quickly makes her way back on board and enters through a shattered window. However, her plan only works for a short time. Before long, the killer finds her. Grabbing Julia by the hair, he drags her across the deck and begins choking her. Julia fights back with everything she has, but the man is far stronger than she is. Meanwhile, Cassie is watching the terrifying scene from inside the cabin. Suddenly, she remembers the flare gun she has with her. Without wasting a second, she fires it. The flare shoots straight into the attacker, striking him and sending him stumbling backward in agony as he screams in pain. The attack gives Julia the opportunity she desperately needs to escape. But the burning flare quickly ignites the boat, and flames begin spreading everywhere. Julia rushes to the cabin and gets both of her children out safely. Just as they try to escape, the killer lunges at them once again. This time, Julia uses all her strength to kick him hard, knocking him backward. After getting a safe distance away from the boat, Cassie and Ben spot their father Tom's lifeless body. The heartbreaking sight leaves them devastated, and they immediately break down in tears. To be continued. He blames himself for Tom's death. Crying, he says, "If I hadn't released those balloons into the sky, that man probably would never have found us." Julia is devastated too, but she doesn't have time to grieve. At that moment, she sees the killer emerge from the burning boat once again. Without wasting a second, Julia grabs her children and runs. Just as they get away, the entire boat explodes in a massive blast. After running for a long time, they finally stop behind a rocky hill. But then Julia notices something terrifying in the distance. The killer is still alive and continuing to follow them. The three immediately start running again. Eventually, they reach an area filled with pools of toxic acidic water. Julia tells the kids to keep moving, and together they carefully make their way through it. The acid burns their feet, and Ben suffers the most. Julia has only a few drops of water left, so she gives them all to Ben. After traveling farther, they discover the wreckage of an old airplane that appears to have crashed into the ocean years ago. Looking for shelter, They hide inside the broken plane for the night. Julia takes out a family photo she has been carrying. As they look at it, memories of Tom flood back and the mood becomes emotional. As the night grows darker, exhaustion finally takes over and everyone falls asleep. But sometime later, Casey suddenly wakes up and steps outside. Out of nowhere, the killer tries to grab her from behind. Before he can do anything, Julia attacks him, repeatedly stabbing him with a knife until he collapses. Casey rushes to her mother and hugs her, helping calm her down. The next morning, when they wake up, they are horrified by what they see. The killer's body is completely torn apart. It looks as if some terrifying creature attacked him during the night.